Hey there, everyone. Welcome back. We're winding down the month. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Many of you know that. If you've been following along, you know that we've been doing a 31 Days of Prevention series as an opportunity to come together and share information and inspiration and motivation to increase awareness about domestic violence and ultimately prevent it from happening in the future. Within that series, then within 31 Days of Prevention, I've been doing for the last several days. Today is part 5. We've been talking about making a safe exit. One of the most dangerous times in an abusive relationship is that point where you try to end the relationship or move, leave the house, that type of thing if you're cohabitating or if you share property together. So, you know, the natural thing for people to tell you is just leave. But as we like to say here at 9 Seconds, it's just not that simple. Everything is intertwined and interconnected, and it's a complex problem, and it requires some forethought and some solutions. And so that's what these last 5 days have really been about, is opening up, hopefully, your mind to think about your safety in a different way. And in several of the videos I shared, this is geared for people who are in abusive relationships, but it's not solely for you. Many of the tips can be applied by anybody, and quite frankly should be applied for most of us, depending on our specific situations. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Marci Batiste. I'm the founder and executive director here at 9 Seconds. We are a nonprofit organization with a heart-centered mission for the work that we do, and we tend to take a pretty innovative approach. In other words, we're not just trying to deal with what things bubble up to the surface. We're trying to dig down deep and get to the root of what creates the problem and what causes the problems and what kind of holds people in bondage to domestic abuse. And once you understand why you're in the situation, how you get in there, then making sure that you have the tools and the resources to be able to get out when you're ready to. But as I said, we know here firsthand, it's not that simple. Domestic violence is a complex thing. The relationships that are involved are complex. And so the solutions and things that you have to, do to get yourself out and keep yourself safe in case of abuse is also very complex. Many of you know I shared, about a week or so ago, one of my friends on my Facebook, her family member was just murdered by her child's father in a domestic homicide. And, you know, when I shared that post and I shared that information, that every time I hear this work gets personal. I mean, it's been personal for me from the very beginning, but it gets even more personal because I didn't know then the amount of information that I know now, right? And so I know for a fact there are things that we can do to keep ourselves safe. There are things that we can do. There are red flags that are thrown up that, even myself, like there were things that were done that should have caused alarm for me and been the thing that made me not see that person anymore, but it wasn't enough, right? I wanted the love, the attention, the affection, whatever I was getting out of that relationship. I wanted that more and enough that I was willing to overlook some things that I never, ever, ever should have overlooked. And so this 31 Days of Prevention has really been about opening eyes to some of those types of things. And like I said, in particular, this sub-series on making a safe exit really is about, I want you to think about your life, your health, and your safety in a different way. I want you to think about it bigger picture, because what happens oftentimes, we think that we know the person and we think that we know their capabilities. If you would have asked me even hours before it happened, I would have said, absolutely not. There's no way he would ever do the things that he did to me. Couldn't even wrap my brain around it. And so now I understand you cannot underestimate what people are capable of, particular in the case of domestic violence, because it's about power and control. It's not about you. It's not about you. Like that's the thing we have to remember. We think that it's about us, and it's not. It's about them, and it's about power and control over us. They want to be in control of pretty much everything. And so, you look at narcissism and you look at some of the other, social disorders and things like that. A lot of that stuff goes in it, but at the end of the day, it boils down to power and control, and the cycles are predictable. And so once you understand that, then you can better try and start managing some of this stuff. And leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time. It's even more dangerous than staying in it, and because that's when that person feels like they're losing complete control over you, over the situation. If there's kids involved, they feel like they're going to lose their children. Whole 9 yards. There's a lot that goes into it. So today, this is part 5 of the sub-series called Making a Safe Exit. They are available at 9seconds.org, which is our website. They're available on my YouTube channel, which I forgot to put the link on this video, but I will go back and add that. You can find the information out there. There's actually right now, this is day number 30. So there's 30 videos that specifically talk about domestic violence, how to keep yourself safe, what types of things to look for. And this is part 5 in the Making a Safe Exit series. I broke it up into smaller increments because it is so complex. It is just not that simple. And so today we're going to talk about your digital footprint, your online footprint, and you'll hear different terms for it. But basically, it's the electronic tracking of you, and where you go, the sites you visit, the things that you look for, the things that you search for. We all know that Google tracks us and Amazon like everybody is doing some sort of tracking. If you've downloaded an app from any company, they're tracking you. They're tracking your habits. They're tracking the things that you click on. They're tracking how often you click on it, etc., and so on. So no matter how hard you try, you're going to leave some sort of a digital footprint if you get on the internet. Period. If you personally get on the internet, you're going to leave some sort of footprint. In the case of domestic violence, it's really about minimizing the amount of information that you put out there. So you want to reduce that digital footprint, that online footprint as much as you possibly can. And so yesterday we talked about mobile. So specifically where we're talking about your use of your phone, right? And the digital footprint that your phone leaves. Today we're going to talk more on the lines of your actual computer devices, tablets, that type of thing. But a lot of the information is the same because essentially your phone is just a miniature little tiny computer that's in your pocket or your purse. So a lot of it's the same. But like I said, as far as your digital footprint, you just want to limit as much personal information as you can. And it's difficult to do because when you think about all of the things that you use digital for. I do all my banking online. I've applied for loans online. I've applied for credit cards online. I transfer money online. I send wire transfers online. My banking, pulling my statements, those are electronic. Everything I do essentially is electronic. Like right down to, I order Instacart to get my groceries. I go on Amazon to do a lot of my shopping. And then I have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Huge digital footprint. Then I do interviews and guest appearances on other people's podcasts. Guess what? That's more digital footprints. So anytime somebody links me to something, if you tag me in a post, you're expanding my digital footprint. If I'm a guest on somebody's podcast and they say that I'm the guest, that expands my digital footprint. So it becomes very, very, very difficult to manage that. So there's much of what we do is tracked outside of our control. So when it comes to domestic violence, you have to track and limit your personal identifying information as much as possible. If you're escaping a situation and you don't want that person to find you, you have to be diligent about managing your online presence, your online footprint. Simply changing the name on your Facebook is not going to be enough. Simply changing your password on a couple of accounts is not going to be enough. It requires an intensive approach to all of it. And like I said in a couple of the other videos, all of these tips for these last several days for making a safe exit will be put into a book. They'll be downloadable off the website at no charge, because at the end of the day, we want to keep people safe. So limit your digital footprint, control the things that you can control is kind of the takeaway for that. Some ways that you can do that. You want to, it sounds weird when we're talking digital footprint, but then we're talking physical postal mailing address. You want to get a private mailbox, a PMB, or a PO box. Or you can go, I think like UPS store actually gives you a street address, but then it's to a box. That's like a private mailbox. That's what that is, in case you weren't familiar with what that was. So use that so that, and the reason for that and how that fits into your digital presence is, if you go to apply for something online, you request to have some information sent to you, you need to reroute bank information, that sort of thing. You have to have a physical address to send them to. If you want to apply for a job, you have to have a physical address. And so that's why I usually recommend the PMBs, because they give you a street address. So it actually looks like, maybe an apartment number or something. So it'll have like 1200 Blueberry Street, number 210, right? It looks like a regular address, but it's not. So the 1200 Blueberry Street that's the address for the place where the postal facility is at. And then the 210 is your actual box number, right? So that's how those work. I recommend those because there are some sites and some instances where when you apply for certain things, they require a physical street address. They won't accept a post office box. And so even though the PMB is technically just like a post office box, because you get an actual address, then the systems don't read them that way. So that would be my recommendation there. Make sure you get a PMB. Use that for everything. When you change your address with the postal system, I would change it to the PMB. Now, I will warn you, it can be difficult if you reroute your mail through the postal system to the PMB. It can be difficult to get it switched from the PMB to a permanent residence later. So I always tell people, don't do the address change through the post office. Actually go into the individual companies and change the address. I know it's a lot more convenient to do it the other way. I get it. You pay $1 and it's done. But when we're talking about life or death, we're talking about saving your life, we're talking about protecting your children, I think a few extra minutes going online or calling into these companies, if they're banks, stopping in and doing address changes individually, because it'll make it easier on the back end of it when you finally do relocate and are ready to start using an actual home address. So that's one of the things. When we start talking about, we talked yesterday a lot about passwords. When you're setting up your passwords, you know, everything has a password and we're not supposed to use the same one. We all know that. We all know that we suck at that and that we probably usually use the same one, myself included. I'm so totally guilty of that. But in the case of domestic violence, you have to, like I said, you have to go that extra step. And so most passwords will accept characters up to, you know, some are 10, some are 12, some are 15 at length. Some are longer than that. And so the recommendation for safety and security is that they're 12 to 15 digits long. Now that can be a combination of letters, numbers, symbols, whatever. And individual websites some will require a specific symbol, some won't. So you want to try and make it a substantial, a substantial enough length that it's difficult to guess, but that it's going to be usable on these various sites. And you'll have to tweak them some, and that's okay. I would recommend that for the most part, they all be different. They'll all be different. that protects you in a variety of different ways, but especially if you've got somebody who is stalking and tracking your information, you definitely want to make sure they're all different. Keeping track of them, don't write them down. You can use like a digital password keeper or something like that, and that will store it in there. So you really just have that one master password, and then everything else is hidden under there. You just have to make sure that you disguise that enough that if somebody gets to your phone, they can't get into your digital password and access it. But that's an easier way to kind of keep everything together, especially if you're going through a situation where you've literally making, 15 or 20 different unique lengthy passwords. When you think about making a long password like that, sometimes it's easier to do it as a phrase, but it needs to be a phrase that only you know. Like you could do something like, summer is my favorite season. Well, that's character-wise, I don't know how many, and it doesn't really mean anything to anybody. So the likelihood, so even though there's no numbers or no special characters in there, it's random, right? You can also, you can get as creative as you want to with it, but when people hear you say, oh, you need a password that's 10 or 12, whatever digits long, they're like, OMG, what the heck am I supposed to use? And so the phrase is kind of an easy way to sort of remember what that is. Just remember, it can't be anything that your abuser is going to know. It shouldn't be anything, if there's like a favorite, like I'm a Steelers fan, I would never put nothing with Steelers in it because that's obviously something somebody would guess. So you just want to be aware of that kind of thing. TV shows that you normally watch. If there's certain things that you typically say, don't use that. And try and switch it up. And like I said, you just download a password keeper and store them in there. And we were talking yesterday on the digital side about having a safety phone, a burner phone, just a pay as you go prepaid phone. You can also just do like switch out your SIM card, and that changes things up for it as well. When you're doing this stuff, you want to be studious about how you begin making these changes, because if you just jump in and all of a sudden all your passwords are different and your abuser has been monitoring your accounts on a regular basis, and then he goes to log in, or she in some cases goes to log in one day and all of a sudden they're all changed, well, that's going to throw up a red flag. It's going to start blowing off sirens. So be studious and methodical and strategic about how you begin to make some of these changes. You need to make them, but you also need to be aware of what's going on and the uniqueness of your circumstance before you go in and actually do it. The other thing is to beware, like we talked about with the phone, on the computer, beware of what sites you're searching, because it has a search history in there. You can use on Chrome. Chrome's got an incognito mode that makes it more difficult to track, but I would just say steer clear of looking anything up on a shared device or a device that your abuser would have access to completely. I would recommend, if you can get to a library, go to the library, do your research there. If you have a trusted friend, you can go to their house, maybe use their computer. I would recommend that you do that. Do not use your own home computer, your own devices, because again, we talked about that digital footprint in the beginning. Everything you do is tracked, it's stored. Those little alerts that pop up and talk about this site uses cookies. Well, the cookies is tracking. It's a tracking mechanism. And so what it does is they say, the cookies allows the page to load faster. Well, that's true. It's true because the cookies remember everything that you did the last time you accessed that site. That's why if there's certain sites I access all the time and I go to pull it up on my computer or on my phone, and it pre-fills the things that it thinks that based on what I like, or sites that I've visited before, it automatically does it. So, if I type in 9 seconds, literally if I type a 9 in my Google search bar because I'm on 9 seconds so much, It's the first thing that pops up. Oh, you must want 9 seconds. That's cookies. That's part of that digital footprint. Okay. So keep those in mind. That's really it for today, guys. Just remember, if you need help, there's help available. You can always reach out to me. You can reach out to one of my support or training advocates at 9 Seconds. We have a contact page on the website at 9seconds.org. You can always reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They will help you find resources in your area. And the website for that is thehotline.org. And the phone number is 1-800-799-7233. I always think SAFE because it's 1-800-799-SAFE. And it takes me a minute to always remember what the actual numbers are. But they're available. There's a National Sexual Assault Hotline. There's a National Human Trafficking Hotline. There are tons and tons of resources out there. Reach out. One of the things that we're working on here at 9 Seconds for the state of Arizona anyway is to really pull those resources together and do some of the legwork for you so that when you get on our site, you can actually know sort of what resources are available, how they work, what they offer, etc., and so on. So that's the message for today, guys. Again, in this series, whether you hear something or not, please share this video out because it may save a life. It may help someone else that's on your timeline. You don't know what people are going through. Nobody in their right mind would have guessed that I was going through some of the things I've went through in some of my relationships. And they were abusive in different ways on different levels. And certainly the day that I showed up in my office with 2 black eyes and a busted lip and couldn't hardly turn my head, my coworkers were shocked. They were shocked. They had heard me talk about this individual. They'd seen pictures of him. They'd seen pictures of us together. Because you share all that stuff in the good times, right? We don't share the bad stuff. And so when bad stuff happens, when really bad stuff happens, people tend to be blindsided by it because they just didn't have a clue of what you were going through. So share this video out. You may save somebody's life. If you know or suspect someone may be being abused, you can start the research process for them. Just be careful when we talk digital footprint. If you email them something, that information is all tracked. So it's better off sometimes a conversation be had face to face rather than over a text message or an email, or even like when you think messaging. So we think like the DMs, right? Goes down in the DMs. Well, tracking goes down in the DMs too. So just because it's not your email or your phone number that they're texting or messaging, that's part of your digital footprint. That information is tracked and it's stored. Okay. So keep that all in mind. I'll be back tomorrow as we wrap up our 31 Days of Prevention series. Tomorrow is October 31st, the end of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but it is not the end of the domestic violence prevention conversation. And so rest assured that we'll continue to do the work. We'll continue to share the messages and look forward to communicating with you, sharing with you, etc., and so on. So again, feel free to reach out, 9seconds.org, or you can always message me here on whatever platform you happen to be watching this video on. So have a blessed day, guys. Stay well, stay happy, enjoy your Halloween. But most importantly, as always, stay safe. Okay, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.